Okay, I think we're good to start. Obviously, people might be coming in. Hi, everyone. I'm Jerrod Ferguson, Vice President of Vance Wealth. I'm joined with a guest speaker today, Steve Lujan, who's also known as the Medicare Man. Today, we're going to be talking about Social Security and Medicare and what you need to know. So thanks, Steve, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So there's a lot of clients on the call. There's also a lot of non-clients. So for those who don't know me, again, Jerrod Ferguson, Vice President of Vance Wealth. I've been here for just over 14 years. My parents became clients back in 2007, and that's how I got to know John. He helped me actually roll over an old 401k. I think it was about 20 or 21 at the time. And he said, what 20-year-old doesn't want to pay the tax on a 401k? And just take the money and run. And so we ended up meeting and ended up offering me an internship. And 14 years later, here I am. And Steve, I know we met earlier this year. You're based out of San Diego. And just give maybe a brief update. I know you kind of go into this a little bit later, but thanks again for giving us your time today.
Oh, no, thank you, Jerrod. Very excited to be here today with the folks that are attending. And again, my name is Steve Lujan. I am the Medicare Man. And a little background, I essentially became Medicare Man because life happened to my family. That's just what happened. I had some folks who had some health issues. I'll explain that specifically. But through that journey, I realized that there were a ton of folks who needed help understanding navigating the complexities of Medicare. And now I'm solely focused in that space. So I'm happy that I get to educate everyone today.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so the outline for today, obviously I'm going to be giving the Social Security update and Steve's going to be giving the Medicare update, but I'll be going through when and how to start receiving Social Security, the effect of remarriage on survivor Social Security, benefits for widowed and divorced spouses, and the ideal age to take Social Security, and the cost of taking it early, or potentially taking it early. And then Steve's going to go through original Medicare, understanding the many windows to sign up for Medicare, and why everyone needs additional private insurance in addition to Medicare. So I think the conversation around Social Security is so important because people are living longer. That's a fact. And so, we're looking at male, female, and a couple's age 65. Basically, if you're a couple age 65, at least one person has a 50% chance to living until 93, and one person has a 25% chance to living to 98. And so, you can see in the top right, when Social Security was actually signed into law by President Roosevelt back in 1935, the average life expectancy was age 60 for men and age 64 for women. And so you look at why Social Security was actually so healthy in the earlier years is because you basically had mortality, ending before people were going to be eligible to start collecting on their Social Security benefits. So, I mean, how perfect is that? Obviously, things have changed over, the last 80 or 90 years or so, and people are living longer. And so that's why it's so much more of an important decision that could impact you for the rest of your life. So even though people are living longer, people are still collecting earlier. And I think we have to try to get away from this mentality of people saying, I'm going to start collecting Social Security in the earliest possible moment that I can, which is 62 for most, because I want to make sure I get my fair share. I want to make sure I get as much out of Social Security as I possibly can. Well, actually, if you have some longevity, which the last slide clearly showed, it could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars over the long term. So 66% of current people that are collecting Social Security, 66% are actually collecting a reduced benefit because they collected it early or prior to the full retirement age, and 34% are collecting a full or increased benefit past their full retirement age. Let's see, I have this covered, but over 2.2 people over the age of 90 are collecting benefits, and about 70,000 are collecting over the age of 100. So clearly people are living longer. We want to make sure that there's just some planning that goes into collecting Social Security when the best age is. Let's see, my clicker doesn't like me. Okay. Oh. Considerations for collecting early. Let me make sure I'm on the right slide here. Yeah, so are you still working? Do you need the money? I have another slide that actually shows if you're collecting Social Security prior to your full retirement age and you are still working, there is a kind of an impact of earning money above certain thresholds. Longevity, clearly your parents, right? Do you have longevity in your family? Are you healthy? I think, are you considered healthy? Are you active in retirement? And then are you married? Do you have a spouse? I think we need to get away from Social Security and collecting it and the decisions around it as a individual decision and more about a joint decision, because if you collect a higher benefit for the rest of your life, your spouse gets to inherit that higher benefit upon your passing. So this shows early versus delayed filing. The percentage of PIA, which is primary insurance amount, is by the, kind of the filing age. You can see here this example, 100% of your PIA primary insurance amount at age 66 for this individual. So full retirement age for people that are born between 1943 and 1954, that is age 66, and age 67, full retirement age is anyone born 1960 and beyond. So I think the important thing is if you go to the left, you can kind of see the reduction in benefits. So let's just say this individual is eligible for $2,000 benefit at their full retirement age. If they collected it at 62, which is their earliest possible age that they can collect it, it's a 75% of that full retirement age benefit. So if they're eligible for $2,000, they only get $1,500 for the rest of their life. Well, if you go out to the other side, if they actually wait, they get a guaranteed 8% increase, right? Age 67 is 108%, age 68 is 116%, so on and so forth. So if you wait until age 70, it's a guaranteed 132% of the primary insurance amount. So in that case where the full retirement age benefit was $2,000, I think it works out to be about $2,600 if you wait until age 70. So that's a higher benefit for the rest of your life. And then again, if you are married, your spouse gets to inherit that higher benefit as well. So we did have someone that actually wrote in and said, hey, I'm eligible for a spousal benefit, but I'm still working. I don't really need the money. Does it make sense to collect? And I think what they need to understand is they're going to be eligible, or they're going to be impacted by an annual earnings limit. And so if you're collecting Social Security and you're still working, collecting Social Security prior to your full retirement age, and you're still working, if you earn over this $19,560, which is the 2022 limit, $1 of benefits are going to be withheld for every $2 of earnings above that limit. So, let's just say you earn $25,000, it's about $5,000 over this. So about $2,500 on an annual basis would be withheld from your Social Security benefits. That number goes up the year you reach full retirement age to about $52,000. And then the ratio is $1 for every $3 earned. Is withheld. And then the month you reach your full retirement age and beyond, there's essentially no limit. So, people always wonder, do I work beyond full retirement age if I'm collecting Social Security? And there really is no downside to that. The money, if you potentially have any money that's withheld or any benefits withheld, is not gone. It's not gone forever. You actually get it back in the form of an increased benefit when you turn your full retirement age. So it's not like the Social Security writes you a nice lump sum check to kind of make you whole for those years that you may have had withheld benefits. And I kind of, unfortunately, they'll just adjust your monthly benefit the year following, the January following you actually turn full retirement age. They'll kind of do their calculation and adjust your benefits going forward. Rules of retirement benefits, starting on the individual benefit side. This is an annual statement that obviously a lot of people on this call are probably familiar with. Unfortunately, they don't send these, and I kind of think it makes sense, right? I think I might have gotten an annual statement, but I'm not collecting for over 30 years, right? It doesn't really make sense for me to do that. I can log in to ssa.gov and actually create an account. So what to know is your benefit is going to be based off the best 35 years. You qualify after 10 years of kind of paying into Social Security or having 40 credits. So you can earn 1 credit a quarter. And I think the earnings on that is about $1,600 or $1,700. And then again, it's based off the best 35 years. There is a cost of living adjustment. I think when you looked at 2022, it was 5.9%. I guess that's maybe for 2023. I've read, it's nothing official yet, but I've read that it might be somewhere between 8 and 9%, kind of based off current numbers. And then be mindful when running estimates. I think if you know you're not going to make it to your full retirement age, if your full retirement age is say 67, and you know for a fact you're retiring at 64, the system assumes that you're going to actually earn the same amount of money at age 64, 65, and 66. So you actually need to go in and manually update 0 for those numbers because you won't have any wages. And so that may or may not affect your monthly payment. It kind of just depends on your best 35 years, but that is a consideration. Retirement benefits for spousal benefits. And so spousal benefits are paid if they've been married for at least 1 year and are at least 62. The other spouse has started collecting their individual benefits. So I think that's really important, is if you're eligible and you want to collect on your spouse's record, assuming that they're a higher earner, they actually have to be collecting their own benefit. So you can actually see below that, as of April 30th, 2016, the strategy known as file and suspend was eliminated. So I was around when we had some clients, and I think they're just starting to fall off now, but they were able to actually file and suspend, collect on their spouse's kind of history, allow their personal benefit to grow till age 70, and then switch over to their higher benefit at age 70. So unfortunately, I think anyone born after 1954 now, that is gone. Eligible to collect 50% of the spouse's benefit at full retirement age. So again, sticking with maybe a $2,000 number, you can collect $1,000 as the spousal benefit at full retirement age. There is no benefit of waiting. So you don't get the annual 8% increase at 68, at 69, it's kind of lost, right? So I would start collecting when you're eligible and not lose that money. Surviving spouse can receive the deceased spouse's benefit if they were married for at least 9 months and married as of the date of death. They're at least 60 and they've not remarried prior to age 16. And then divorced spousal benefits can receive benefits on an ex-spouse earning record if they were married at least 10 years. The divorced spouse is currently unmarried and they're both 62. The ex-spouse does not have to file beyond 2 years after divorce. So if the divorced spouse is trying to collect on their ex-spouse's record, they have to wait 2 years until after the divorce to be able to do that. I think the important thing is the divorced spouses are similar to regular spousal benefits, but the one advantage, and it's kind of obvious, the other spouse doesn't have to file, right? The other spouse does not have to file their own benefits, because you can kind of see how that might create some issues between ex-spouses. And then there's no impact on the ex-spouse's benefit. I don't believe they're notified either. So I think that sometimes like, well, I don't want their benefit to maybe be impacted by me collecting on it, and it doesn't actually get impacted. So I think I just wanted to say high level there. I mean, the slides that I had to go through, there was a ton of different scenarios, right? Different ages to collect, collecting it early, collecting it late, collecting it on time, spousal versus personal. It gets complex. And so there's no one size fits all. I think that's the really important thing is, there's no silver bullet and there's no right answer. It is going to come down to each individual scenario. What your financial goals are, what your other sources of retirement income might be, other assets, right? It's kind of included in a full financial plan. And so Social Security is a really important piece, but there is no one size fits all. So, we do have access to experts at BlackRock, a really strong team. A lot of the slides were from BlackRock. They invest a lot into the data and kind of presentations and making sure that they have resources for advisors. The one thing that we would need is benefit statements. So, the annual benefit statement, we can run different scenarios, show collecting at full retirement age versus delaying until age 70. So that's pretty easy. And then also, are you eligible for an outside pension? That's something that we would also want to know. There's something called the government pension offset or the windfall elimination provision. I'm not going to go into too much detail there, but obviously there is a chance that your benefit might be reduced if you have a pension or the spouse has a pension that did not pay into Social Security. How is Social Security taxed? So it's based off your provisional income. Provisional income is adjusted gross income. So wages, IRA distributions, pensions, capital gains, dividends, et cetera, plus tax exempt interest. So if you have any tax-free bonds, they're going to add that back. And then also half of your Social Security. So if you just look at maybe single, anyone who has provisional income less than 25,000, your benefits are not taxed. If your income, provisional income is between 25,000 and 34,000, up to 50%, and then above 34,000, up to 85% is taxable. So in California, it's only federally taxable at 85%. It's not taxed at the state level. I think there's 13 or 14 states out there that do tax Social Security. California, fortunately, is not one of them. The $1 million question is Social Security going bankrupt? And the Board of Trustees does an annual report. This is from the 2021 report. The trust fund is scheduled to run out of money in 2034. So it's about 12 years from now with no changes. It is important to remember that the majority of the benefits are fueled or funded through the tax system. And so about 80% of the benefits come from taxes. So going bankrupt doesn't necessarily mean your benefits go to zero, that you won't get anything. It just kind of ceases to exist. There might be a reduction in benefits, but I think that remains to be seen. You talk about 12 years from now, right? Will your benefits be cut? I think Congress and kind of the government, I think they only act when they maybe have to. Being proactive 12 years in advance, I feel like it's no one wants to touch it, right? At this point, no one wants to touch Social Security. If you're interested, John Vance, the president of Vance Wealth, he actually did a "If I Were President" presentation, I think back in the summer. And so we might include that with the recording that we send out this time around. But he had some proposals on how to actually fix Social Security, was pretty interesting if you're curious about that. So the proposals put forth do not suggest cutting benefits for those who are 55 or older. So I think probably anyone on this call or webinar is not going to have their benefits potentially impacted. I think it's probably people in like my generation or John's generation, right? People that are a little bit younger that have much more time before collecting. Could we have some reduced benefits? Potentially. President Biden did propose raising the payroll tax percentage from the current 6.2%, gradually raising it by 2%, would obviously increase the solvency by, I think, 75 years. Other options include raising the limit on the amount of pay that is taxed for Social Security, which is currently $147,000. This was proposed last year, if my memory serves me correctly, increasing Social Security tax on wages, but not starting. So it was kind of up to 147, and then there was a gap until 400,000, right? And then anything above 400,000 was taxed. And so it creates this, what's called a donut hole, right? And so the 147 has inflation tied to it. So over time, that 147 is going to be ratcheted up till eventually that donut hole closes and all of your wages are taxed. And so I don't know how popular that is. I mean, that would be pretty punitive. I don't know if they're going to start there, but I think clearly number two is a much easier choice, raising the full retirement age from the current age of 67. Clearly with longevity increasing, the full retirement age hasn't really moved back proportionately. So I think that is a clear place to start. Lowering cost of living adjustments. When you look at what's been estimated for this year, I think I covered that. It might be between 8 and 9% based off of current data, and then cutting benefits. I think that's the last option. So how to actually file your benefits, 3 ways: online, which is the preferred method. I did read, kind of doing research for this, just the wait time and the time to get a in-person meeting or appointment is crazy. And so I know they're investing a lot into the servicing side of things, that they lost a lot of people, I think, through COVID. So online is the preferred method. In person, you can call Social Security and schedule an appointment, and also you can schedule an appointment via phone. If you're local to Santa Clarita, there is a Social Security office on Turning Point by the golf course. So some key takeaways, and then I'm going to hand it over to Steve to talk about the Medicare. When you look at Social Security, it's a really important component of the retiree's retirement income plan. It's not the only component, but it is an important piece. But you can't advise on when to collect Social Security based off of looking at it in a silo, right? You have to factor in everything else. You have to factor in other retirement assets, cash. You have to factor in a pension, any other sources, and then also your financial goals, right? What's important to you. And so I think when you look at Social Security, it is very complex. The Social Security Administration is not there to help you make the right decision. They're there to give you your choices, but they're really going to take instruction. So you really need to be consulting with your financial advisor. Obviously, we're guiding clients through this, and it is going to include not only looking at Social Security, but everything else that's included in running a financial plan. Steve, I think that's what I have for now on the Social Security side. I'm going to let you jump on and kind of pick up on the Medicare side of things, because clearly that's also why people are here.
All right. Yeah, everyone should be able to hear me now, right?
Yep, you're good.
All right. Great job, Jerrod. Thank you. Again, everyone, I'll just kind of reintroduce myself. My name is Steve Lujan. I am the Medicare Man. And the reason why I'm the Medicare Man is because I actually focus in one area of health insurance planning, and that's called Medicare. I'll share a quick story. A few years ago, my wife and I were having dinner, and she said, "Hey, Steve, why don't you think about changing your business name?" My business name at the time was Lujan Insurance Solutions. Pretty boring and not memorable. She said, "Why don't you call yourself Medicare Man?" I thought it was silly initially, but I'm very glad that I listened to her, because a lot of folks, it makes it easy for folks to understand the area of specialty that I help in. I work primarily with financial advisors and the clients that need help with their Medicare planning. So there's a little backdrop as to why in the world I'm called Medicare Man. I do one thing. Now, I thought, the whole point of today's presentation with Jerrod and myself is to basically educate, but I also want to make this a little fun. You see some images on the screen here, and I promise that by the end of this presentation, you're actually going to have an idea of what these things are. So keep in mind, I'm going to touch base on each of these, and they're all related to Medicare. Now, I want you to take just a second to take a look at this picture. The woman on the right is my mother, and the woman on the left is my wife. And at the time that I took this picture, my mom was already living in a facility because she could no longer live with my wife and I at home. And at this point, my mother had basically forgotten who I was. She had an Alzheimer's diagnosis when she was in her mid to late 60s. And at that time, I was in my early to mid 30s. A whole lot of pain happened during this time period. And I'm very fortunate that I met my wife, because she allowed me to recover in many, many ways. I was financially impacted, emotionally impacted. Our family was in some ways really stretched to its limits and its boundaries. And what I learned by attending Alzheimer's family support groups, I learned that I was not alone. And I'll share some statistics. But I wanted to give you a little background because I love what I do. I have fun doing it, but I take a serious tone when it comes to educating and protecting my clients. Now, I mentioned that I was also my mom's primary caregiver before my wife helped me support my mother. But here's what I learned through the National Alliance for Caregiving. About 61% of folks that are taking care of a loved one are actually still working. And this in many cases, as folks become a little, as folks have health issues, this becomes very common. I happen to have been in my 30s when I took care of my mother. I have clients who are in their 60s and 70s who are now assuming that same role. And as I touched on, the data here shows that 45% folks who are in this role have at least one major financial impact. I can tell you from personal experience, it's more than a one-time event. I actually didn't work full-time for 4 years, and that was financially devastating. But again, I was very fortunate to have met my wife, and I wanted to touch on this data because it's real, it's happening. All of us in some way will either help someone or will need help in the future. And I'm here to protect my clients in that one area that ties into all this, which is Medicare, proper Medicare planning. I want to touch on one of the elephants in the room. Most people say, hey, Steve, great name, it's catchy, but how in the world do you get paid? So I'd like you to focus on the star here, where it highlights the fact that my commission is included in the private insurance plan that my clients select. So I'm an independent health insurance broker. I do not work for one insurance company. I survey the market, and you'll never really hear me promoting one insurance company because I stress the importance to my clients in understanding the mechanics of how Medicare works. So once again, I do not charge your financial advisor any fees for the work that I do. I get paid directly by the insurance company that you select. And once I help you with that process, I provide you with lifetime support. Now, I do want to just stress the fact that at some point, each and every one of us will benefit from joining Medicare. And I just wanted to touch base, it affects everyone. So it's really important that we proactively plan for this. And once again, this is why Jerrod and I are teaming up to support his current clients and prospective folks who are also attending here. Now, what is Original Medicare? A lot of you folks, I believe we may have a blended group here where some folks are already on Medicare, others will be joining here soon. But Original Medicare, when you hear that phrase, I want you to understand that that is the government component. Original Medicare equals government. Medicare is a federal health insurance program, and it consists of two primary parts, Part A and Part B. Essentially, that's inpatient and outpatient coverage. Now, I provide my clients with step-by-step instruction on how to register with the government for this step. And I did mention that I do not charge any fees for my work when I help my clients plan for the private insurance side of Medicare. However, about 20% of the clients that I help basically say, hey, Steve, would you mind helping me register with the government? Because I'm actually finding it a bit painful and stressful, and I just don't want to deal with it. So when a client asks for that help, that's an optional service. It's not a requirement when working with me, but I can handle that service for a one-time fee. I just wanted folks to be aware of that. So now what happens when you join Medicare? Again, Original Medicare consists of two parts, A and B. You're going to receive your red, white, and blue Medicare card. I've met individuals who have actually had their red, white, and blue Medicare card and never knew that they needed to add additional private health insurance coverage. And the folks that I would say fall into this trap are folks that say, hey, Steve, I never see the doctor. I'm pretty healthy. I don't want to spend too much money on my Medicare health insurance. Here's the problem. If you only sign up for Medicare, Medicare covers a significant amount of your doctor's bill, 80%. But if you need additional attention and you're in the hospital, you're accessing doctors for a variety of reasons, you're now responsible for 20% out-of-pocket costs without a cap. So once again, when folks register for Medicare, Part A and B, that's the first step of the equation. That's the government piece. We then need to add private insurance. So when you do that, you satisfy the 80% government and 20% private insurance. And I help with the timing of both sides. Now, once you have Original Medicare, again, there's a ton of advertisement. There's a lot of direct mail that folks are receiving, even sales calls and robocalls, making it very confusing. I'm going to simplify it here. Once you sign up for Medicare, that red, white, and blue card, you're going to have two options to add private insurance coverage. One is known as a Medicare Supplement plan. The other is a Medicare Advantage. I'm going to first focus on the Medicare Supplement side. And I want to give you an idea of the type of individual that says, this is what I need. Essentially, when someone has a Medicare Supplement plan, this gives them the freedom to choose any provider that they would like to see. So it might be someone who's been accustomed to having a PPO plan. It's also important for someone who says, hey, Steve, I spent 3 months in California, 3 months in Texas. I don't want to be tied to a network. Once again, that's a right fit for that individual is a Medicare Supplement plan. It's also important for anyone who is entering Medicare and has a serious pre-existing health issue to really consider a Medicare Supplement plan, because when you first enter Medicare, you're not asked any health underwriting questions, which means you have a guaranteed acceptance into this plan type. I'll give you an example. At the age of 65, someone can pay about $150 a month for this Medicare Supplement plan. It's very predictable because once you pay a monthly premium on this plan, you pay a small annual deductible, and all of your co-pays and co-insurance are eliminated to zero. So again, very predictable. A quick recap, this type of plan allows you to choose your own doctor. It eliminates any co-pays and co-insurance, and it protects you if you're traveling abroad or domestically and need to have access in different states. When someone chooses that option, they also will need to add a prescription drug plan. So now what happens when someone says, hey, Steve, I don't need all that additional coverage. I'm pretty healthy. I've always had an HMO. What's the alternative? The alternative is a Medicare Advantage plan, also known as an HMO, also known as Part C. So when we can make a comparison here between the two, a Medicare Advantage plan is network-based. So think of Kaiser. Although there are a lot of HMO insurance types out there, Kaiser is a very common name. So if an individual chooses this plan, they'll be connected to a network. They will pay either a low or no monthly premium. So I gave an example that under a Medicare Supplement plan, someone might pay about $150 a month. If they sign up for an HMO plan, it's possible that they may have a zero monthly premium. Now, it doesn't mean there aren't any costs, because if you look at the second bullet point under Medicare Advantage, the unpredictable costs come into play because you will have co-pays and co-insurance under this plan type. And Medicare sets the limit at $7,550 for the maximum out-of-pocket risk that a Medicare beneficiary has. So again, these are the two primary options that someone has to consider when they sign up for Medicare. And I want to also quickly touch, because it's important, I want to touch on this point. Clients will ask me, Steve, what happens if I sign up for a Medicare Supplement plan and later decide to join a Medicare Advantage plan? Can I do that? And the answer is yes. It's very easy because there aren't any health underwriting questions that you actually need to answer when you switch over to an HMO. Now, what happens if someone starts on an HMO and later wants to join a Medicare Supplement plan? When this happens, you now open yourself to having to answer health questions. So if you had a recent hospitalization, a cancer diagnosis, or in my mom's case, an Alzheimer's diagnosis, this happened to me. She was on an HMO and I wanted a second and third opinion. And that's when I found out that that serious diagnosis prevents you from ever joining a Medicare Supplement plan for the rest of your life. And this is something that's not advertised. And this is something that I stress when I educate my clients. So once again, these are the two private insurance options that you add, to Medicare.
Hey, Steve.
Yes.
We did have a question that came in that said, since the cost of Part B is going down, will the cost of Advantage plans also be going down?
Yeah, I understand the question. And the thing is, they're actually not related. So the Part B costs going down, that's connected to the government piece, and the Medicare Advantage plans, which are private insurance types, believe it or not, there's no correlation. Whether the Part B goes up or down, the Medicare Advantage plans have different negotiated contracts. So there's no connection there. And as I mentioned, there are many HMO plans that have a zero monthly premium. So it's county specific, but for anyone who would like help addressing or finding the right options, I can always help out with this.
Okay. And then there's also another one. Is there not a PPO Advantage plan?
There may be, they're not available in every county. So you're primarily going to see HMO, you'll see Medicare Supplement Plan, and there are a few PPO plans that are available. However, when I study them, research them, analyze them, the PPO plans are actually more expensive than a Medicare Supplement Plan. More expensive and have more restriction. So it's really interesting. But back to kind of my process here, I help clients figure out, Jerrod, what the right fit based on their needs is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I mean, it makes sense why planning is so important, not only on the Social Security side, but on the Medicare side, right? And having a plan in place and not just kind of going into it maybe misinformed or not really setting aside the time to plan. There's one more thing that I like to add. I forgot to do the housekeeping items. Clearly, John does this a lot more, but I just wanted to mention there's a Q&A box. If you guys want to ask a question, you can type in a question. We can try to answer those throughout the presentation here. We are going to be sending out a recording by the end of the week. And so that will include a link to the presentation recording. And then also, I think we'll put up If I Was President by John as well, which has the proposed Social Security fix. And we'll kind of get back to your presentation, Steve. Thanks.
Sounds good. No, thank you. So on this slide, I want you to actually think back to some of those images that I first flashed when I started my presentation. And that cookie cutter symbol has to do with my Medicare Man process. As you're learning, Medicare is complicated, but my Medicare Man process is a very cookie cutter system. The way my brain thinks, simple. I think I'm permanently stuck in 4th grade in my head. So I like to keep it simple. There was an image there of windows, right? And as part of my process in step 1, it's really important to have, I would recommend, our initial conversation when you turn 64, because that image of the multiple windows represents an individual who is still working, retired, or covered under a spouse. And each, depending on which answer you give, that's going to trigger a different Medicare starting point. So again, step 1 in my cookie cutter process is let's have a conversation at 64. Step 2 allows me to then give you my professional recommendation, and then we enroll you in the proper plans. And lastly, again, once I help you out, you're now, essentially I'm adopting you, so I get to help you as long as you're on Medicare. That's how it works. There was an image of a snake or a cobra that I also want to touch on. Cobra, some of you folks may have experienced either a job loss or knew of someone who needed to pick up Cobra. Now, Cobra is an option. It's a very expensive option, but I'll tell you that Cobra and Medicare do not play well together. When someone is turning 65, or if they're over 65 and offered Cobra, they need to sign up for Medicare within 8 months of that job loss, or else it gets very complicated in the form of Medicare enrollment delays, or even worse, lifetime penalties. Again, all the reason why it's important for us to have a conversation at 64 to make sure that you're on the right track.
Hey, Steve.
Yes.
I got a quick question on that. Obviously, the ideal scenario is someone contacts you for a discovery appointment at 64 because they attended this webinar, right? But let's just say there's a situation where we have a client that's still working. Let's say they're actually 66. They're currently on kind of an employer-sponsored healthcare plan, and they decide to retire at 67 or 68. How does that process work? Can you guide anyone through that's working past age 65 that's currently not on Medicare?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, for that individual, let's connect 6 months before you need your Medicare to kick in or start, right? So regardless of your age, whether you're 67 or 75, when you know you're going to retire or lose your group health insurance, let's have that conversation 6 months before you need your Medicare to kick in. The reason being, because there's a process there where there's a document called Proof of Employment Coverage Form. It's essentially a form that an individual's human resources department will need to fill out to show that that individual had group health insurance coverage when they turned 65. It's their get out of jail free card in terms of a Medicare penalty. So there is a process. I help with navigating that sequence of events. But I would say for anyone who's, taking notes, 6 months before that life event, if possible, reach out. I have had situations where someone says, "Hey, Steve, I need your help. My insurance coverage is ending. When? Tomorrow." I'm like, yes. I mean, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and I do my best to eliminate that for everyone.
Medicare Man and Miracle Worker, is that your new nickname?
Man, the tag is Medicare Man to the rescue. So,
Okay.
yeah, the thing is, I end up pulling my hair out. So early, everybody, early.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for that.
You're welcome. I want to touch on the fact that some of you who have worked for an employer, they may offer you a retiree health insurance package or option. So I've helped folks who are state employees, federal employees, part of the union. So again, if you work for a company that says, "Hey, congratulations, we want to help you in retirement. We're going to offer you some Medicare options." Here's what I suggest. Compare whatever it is that your company is offering you with what plans that I could potentially help you with, or someone like me. The whole exercise behind this is to basically maximize your benefits and minimize your costs. And a lot of folks aren't aware that they can actually do this. You can not join a retiree plan and join Medicare separately only when it makes financial sense and when there's a maximum benefit there as far as coverage. I will say that for folks who have served in the military and have TRICARE for life, that is one individual that I will say thank you to, shake their hand, and tell them that I cannot do anything to improve their situation because they have the best coverage. So that's for someone who has TRICARE for life. Anyone else, I can help you analyze your options and basically talk through what you think might be best for you. All right, the education continues, but we're going to have a little fun. We're going to talk about two sisters here, MAGI and IRMAA. And I want you to know, everyone who enters Medicare is going to meet MAGI, and some, however, will also meet IRMAA, and I'll explain this. So if you can remember the image of that red, white, and blue Medicare card, I mentioned it has two components, Part A and Part B. Part A has no monthly premium. Part B does carry a monthly premium, and it's based on your MAGI. And MAGI stands for your Modified Adjusted Gross Income. So MAGI's flashing the money because everyone who joins Medicare needs to high-five MAGI on their way into the Medicare Boys and Girls Club. So I want to give you an example, like how much do Medicare premiums cost? So I've highlighted the first row and the last row here. If you could take a look at the individual tax filer who in 2022 has made $91,000 or less, or folks who filed jointly at $182,000 or less, they will pay the standard Medicare premium amount, which is $170.10. So Medicare plans are individual plans. They're no longer family plans. So if you have a husband and a wife who are both joining Medicare at the same time, this number doubles, right? 170 times 2. Now, the highest amount that someone can pay for Medicare is $578.30. Once again, it's all based on income, right? Once you move beyond that first tier, above that $170, that's where you see the second sister, IRMAA, with the cash, because IRMAA affects high income earners. IRMAA stands for Income Related Monthly Adjustment Amount. So once again, if you're a higher income earner, you can see that your Medicare Part B premiums increase. And once again, everyone's going to meet MAGI when they enter Medicare. Not everyone will meet IRMAA, but it's important to understand that she's around the corner if you're a high income earner. Your income levels also affect your Medicare Part D premiums, and D stands for drugs. So once again, we're using the same income table. And the difference now is if you're a high income earner, let's select again that bottom number, the highest number where it says $77.90 plus your plan premium. let's say your drug plan premium is $20. You pay $20 to the private insurance plan, but you pay that $77.90 to the government as that higher income surcharge. Again, really important. I spend a lot of time, educating my clients because folks, believe it or not, still think, some, not all, they think that Medicare is actually free. And it comes as a shock if they think that, and it comes as a major sticker shock if they're a high income earner.
Hey, Steve, someone had asked Part D and Medicare Advantage versus supplement.
Yeah. So when someone adds a Medicare supplement plan, you're going to have up to, I'll explain it this way. Every county has about 30 different drug plans for someone to choose. When they sign up for a Medicare supplement plan, you have what are called standalone drug plans. You'll have 30 options there. When someone joins a Medicare Advantage plan, the Medicare Advantage plan bundles their drug plan. So whatever their negotiated contract rates are for that year for their drug formulary, it's going to be locked into that one HMO plan. So again, when I go through my assessment with clients, if they're taking expensive medication, it's really important to understand, are you good with that HMO plan, with that one formulary, or do we need to really explore the market and analyze it against, potentially 30 other plans? So the HMO plans bundle their drugs. The Medicare supplement plan, you have to choose it as an add-on or a standalone.
Okay.
Now, I want to talk about taxable capital gains event that trigger IRMAA. So let's say an individual starts at that first level Medicare Part B premium of $170. If they sell real estate, if they sell a business, if they receive an inheritance, that's going to trigger, that's a taxable capital gains event. So that means that their future Medicare premiums will bump up based off of where they land with their income, right? And the interesting thing is, let's just say that event happens in 2022. That will not show up until someone's 2024 Medicare bill, because they're reassessed every quarter, but there's basically a 2-year lag time before that capital gains event will show up on the Medicare side of things. So again, really important. I'm not a tax professional. I'd like you folks to work with your financial advisor, Jerrod, or also speak to a tax professional to really game plan, because IRMAA, I don't want to say that it can always be prevented, but at least if you're aware of it heading into it, the shock won't upset you. And I just found that to be very important. Now, there are situations, and I'll give you just some real examples. I have clients who are timing their retirement with the start of their Medicare. So what happens if someone during their working years is making $400,000, but they're turning 65, and that's when they're ringing the bells and retiring? They say, Steve, I'm no longer at that $400,000 level. I'm now under $150,000. What do I do here? Do I still have to pay this higher surcharge? And the answer is no, as long as you file your IRMAA appeal. There's a special form here that you pick up through the Social Security office. I also send this to my clients when they need it, but it's a life-changing event form. So in my world, when I help my clients out, typically they can appeal because they've had work stoppage, retirement, or work reduction. They basically went from 40 hours a week to 15 hours a week as a consultant. And if you can show that you have a lower income, then you can reduce the amount that you owe for your Medicare Part B and Part D premiums. So that's very important for folks to be aware of. It's not necessary for you to pay more for your Medicare premiums if you can appeal it. Now, we are 11 days away from the fall Medicare open enrollment period. So this is for everyone for the folks that are already in the Medicare system. So if someone's on a Medicare Advantage plan, which is an HMO plan, or if they're on a prescription drug plan, this is a time of year where they can essentially have a do-over if they feel they're not happy with their plans. I will tell you that the bulk of my clients, because we do such a heavy pre-work in terms of understanding their needs and their doctors and their medication, it's not necessary for folks to flip out of plans every year. That's what the insurance companies, some insurance companies want you to do, just kind of roll over, because obviously there's a profit for them to make. But from a stress standpoint and from my clients benefiting, there's not always a benefit unless an individual is paying too much, if they feel they're paying too much out of pocket, if they've had some major changes due to their drug needs, or if their medical group all of a sudden says, hey, we were accepting this HMO plan, but starting in 2023, we're no longer accepting it. That has happened. So again, the fall Medicare open enrollment period, it runs from October 15th through December 7th. This is a time of year where you can make changes if necessary.
Hey, Steve, if someone wants to make changes, maybe it sounds like someone had asked if they already have Medicare, they already have a rep, just not thrilled with the experience. Is it possible to switch reps? And if so, how does that work?
Yeah, they can mail that rep some rotten chocolate chip cookies. I'm kidding. So how it works, you can always, if the only way you can typically switch an agent or representative is if they were to help you change to another plan that's in your best interest. If the plan that you're on is like a great plan and that person does the right job and says, hey, there's nothing that I can do to improve your situation, unfortunately, there's no gain for that broker. You know, if they just assess, hey, that's the best plan for you. But again, if through that interaction, we find that there's a better solution, then that new insurance plan qualifies that new broker to become the agent of record.
Thanks.
But you can always try the chocolate chip cookies, man. It might work. Whoops. Okay. And I'm going to be a little honest here. Medicare kind of gets a bad rap sometimes. And I want folks to know, like, I've seen both sides of the fence. And in general, I think, again, nothing is perfect, but Medicare covers the bulk of your medical expenses, right? But again, it doesn't cover everything. And I want to highlight a few areas that I was impacted by, so I lived it, I understand it, and so do my clients. Medicare does not cover long-term care insurance. Again, this is for folks who are considering this as an option. I have had individuals ask me, hey, Steve, does Medicare cover long-term care insurance, or can you help me with long-term care insurance? So the answer to both of those questions is Medicare does not cover long-term care insurance, and I do not offer it. This is why I lean and revert back to you, Jerrod, right? For folks who want to have that conversation. How do I protect myself? As far as dental, vision, hearing, foreign, and cosmetic, once again, Medicare is not designed to cover these areas. There are some strategies to help folks offset cost, but in general, folks really want to prepare for long-term care and dental. And certain HMO plans or Medicare Advantage plans may offer some limited benefits in this area, but in general, it's very limited in nature. And I just wanted to stress that.
Steve, someone had asked, they said they found Medicare, having Medicare in their area is difficult to find a doctor that would accept it. Their doctor's office basically cite the Medicare reimbursement as much as private insurance. So they only take a certain percentage with Medicare. Can you comment on this? Because everyone apparently is supposed to take it.
Yeah, so statistically speaking, about 95% of providers nationwide accept Medicare, right? 94, 95. So that means original Medicare. And this is where it gets confusing. When you have original Medicare and you add a Medicare supplement plan, you have access to you have nationwide coverage. The language in a Medicare Advantage plan, Medicare Advantage is not part of the same original Medicare system. It now becomes an HMO. So the person who asked the question, we would need to clarify, are they talking about original Medicare? Their doctors do not accept original Medicare, or their doctors do not accept Medicare Advantage? Because those are two different answers. And I will tell you, there are doctors who are offering a concierge service. Essentially, it's a boutique shop. We're not accepting any insurance. we're going to charge cash because we were in demand. And in that scenario, that doctor will not accept the Medicare Advantage or Original Medicare.
Okay.
Great question. So a quick recap here with my Medicare Pictionary. The cookie cutter, right? Medicare is not cookie cutter, but I've created a cookie cutter system that really makes it easy for folks to understand what to do and when to do when it comes to Medicare planning. 64, it basically is letting you know at 64, let's have, if possible, let's have that conversation at 64. But for those of you who are still working and are over the age of 65, just kind of put that 6-month bug in your ear. Let's talk 6 months before you need your Medicare to kick in. If you're around 64 and are offered COBRA, remember, COBRA can bite you, you know where, if you miss your Medicare enrollment window. So protect yourself. The multiple windows, you know, where are you today? Are you retired? Are you still working? Are you covered under a spouse? And my two awesome sisters, MAGI and IRMAA, everyone high fives MAGI on their way into the Medicare Boys and Girls Club. And IRMAA may high five you too, but keep in mind, she'll reach out to you if you're on the higher income side of things. By doing everything right here, as I've laid out with these images, you will definitely avoid any sort of penalty or issues as far as signing up for Medicare. Again, easy peasy. Let's start early. Let's have a conversation. And lastly, for folks who have interest in having a conversation, I recommend visiting my website. It's helpmemedicareman.com. Again, pretty cartoonish, but easy to remember, Help Me Medicare Man. And for folks that are interested in a Medicare plan review, or for folks who are interested or who are actually entering Medicare for the first time, you have the option to select your appointment.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I think having your email there is going to be helpful. There are some questions that came in that I think are just a little bit, and maybe on the Social Security side as well, a little more kind of personal in terms of like my scenario. And a lot of those are probably best answered either in an email or kind of a one-off call. Obviously, we're doing a 30-minute complimentary consultation as well. We can kind of focus on the Social Security aspect and run through some of those scenarios. I think based off of the conversation today, it's clearly a deeper conversation. It's not just Medicare in a silo as having that 30-minute complimentary consultation about an overall financial plan. The next upcoming webinar is going to be by John Vance, the President of Vance Wealth. It's going to be an election update. So that's going to be kind of back to the Tuesday, November 15th at 4:30. And then let's see, we have only a few minutes for some additional questions. Let me see if there's anything that we can knock out. Someone said, I work for the county. They don't take out Social Security, but my ex of 25 plus years gets Social Security. Are you able to get his benefit? And can you get it at 62 if you're still working? I think the answer is it depends. You might be subject to the government pension offset. And at 62, that's obviously going to be the reduced benefit. So that would need to be a decision that you would want to make. And then also subject to the income test, right? Let's see if there's anything else that's more general. Steve, what happens if you stop working as of November and want to have medical coverage in the same month with Medicare?
There's a movie called Mission Impossible.
They have to essentially enroll, right? And then they may be on COBRA for that time and again can start January.
Yeah, well, if they're working, and we'll use November as now, are they over the age of 65?
I don't know.
Okay, so let's just assume that they're eligible for Medicare. If they're over the age of 65, it's going to take them about 4 to 8 weeks to have active Medicare coverage. So that means they're going to need to potentially have COBRA for 60 days. And actually, that's an excellent point, Jerrod. I have that exact case right now with an individual who's turning 65 this month, and his health insurance is ending And I actually, when it comes to COBRA, in his case, it's going to take him about 8 weeks to receive his new Medicare card in the mail. And with COBRA, you're given this 60-day, call it a grace period, where you lose your job and your work ends, your work coverage ends, let's say at the end of October. So starting November 1, you have 60 days to elect COBRA or abandon COBRA. But during that 60 days, if your Medicare starts, then you're not without health insurance coverage. So what's interesting is, let's say you're on that 45th day on COBRA and your Medicare hasn't kicked in, but you now have a medical event, then you will have to pay for 2 months of COBRA. But if you're at 55 days and you've never used it and your Medicare starts, you wouldn't have to pay those 2 months of COBRA. Does that make sense? It's really, there's basically a grace period that you can take advantage of. But again, having the conversation early, I can help clients walk through that process.
Okay. Yeah, I think we just want to be respectful of time. We're obviously at an hour. There's just one last question. If you have a capital gain event hit, is it just for the 1 year, or is it allocated over several years? And I know that answer, it's 1 year, right? 2022 income is going to impact your 2024 Medicare premiums. And so if you kind of level out or come back to normalcy in 2023, that's going to determine your 2025 Medicare premiums. So there are some follow-up questions. We're not going to be able to get through all these. I will make sure that Lauren kind of takes these down and we get back to either kind of filter through Steve if it's going to be more of a Medicare related question. If it's more Social Security, we can obviously try to get an email out. If you have additional questions, you can email us at info@vancewealth.com. We'll make sure you get an answer. And then Steve, you want to just cover your email one more time?
Yeah, it's steve@helpmemedicareman.com. And once again, for folks who are interested in scheduling one-on-one time, when you visit my website, you can click on the appropriate appointment.
Awesome. Okay, Steve. Hey, thanks for your time. Thanks for joining me for this joint conversation about Social Security and Medicare. Obviously, a huge piece in the overall retirement plan. And thanks again for giving us an update.
Oh, well, thank you for allowing me to be part of the village. They're both important topics, and I'm glad that we can support your clients on both ends.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. I'll talk to you later. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.